economic agenda, the finance track of the G20. As we know, two different tracks, the Sherpa track and the finance track, of which our colleagues have said that around 10 have seen forward movement. I'm going to pick up. Hello and welcome to Business Today Television. I am Siddharth Zarabi and with me my colleague Karishma Asudani. Both of us are at this lovely media center, and the great pride that all of us here in the media are having, right behind us, the Indian flag, and then as you can see, all the participating nations, the G20, and if I may call it a Jamboree 20, but I mean that in a positive light. A lot of things happening as we are just literally hours away from the formal beginning of the summit. But there's already been some action, and I'm going to go to Karishma first. Karishma, we have had a formal briefing by the G20 Sherpa, Mr. Amitabh Kant. We also heard from Finance Ministry officials, including the Economic Affairs Secretary, Ajay Seth. Tell us what has been said by Mr. Kant and the Finance Ministry in the press conference that was just held a little while ago.
Right. So that's the creme de la creme of the G20, India's presidency, who have shared that the key outcomes or the key discussions that the leaders are going to be taking up in the next 2 days will be focused majorly on the MDBs and the climate issues. Now, so that you have to understand that this is the first time that we are talking significantly about climate issues. If we talk about under any of the tracks, be it finance, be it trade, this is going to be the center of discussion. But what has also, of course, been under the talking points is what happens with the Russia-Ukraine war and its impact on a formal communique or a declaration that the global leaders will be discussing in the next 2 days. Very key important discussion also on the crypto assets that have come out through the FSB IMF paper yesterday, which talks about a blanket ban not being an easy option. Now, a couple of G20 member countries have already banned crypto in their respective countries. So this being a discussion point in the next 2 days, followed by what happens in Marrakesh next month, will actually design how the use of cryptocurrencies and crypto assets will be taken up in across the global countries in the next coming few years. So next 2 days, I think a lot of actions, a lot of discussions, especially on the key agendas related to debt vulnerabilities, related to MDBs, related to how climate finance is being adopted by different countries.
Okay, so viewers, there's a lot to unpack and we'll do that here on Business Today Television over the course of today, Saturday and Sunday, the two main days of the summit. And really, if we need to understand what India has brought to this presidency, it's not just the policy agenda. It's the massive effort that has been put in by India to actually make this a people's G20 presidency. I heard the press conference and very clearly all the Indian officials were at pains to point out that this was not something that was just done as a routine event. The massive exercise that was done was perhaps the largest of its kind that has ever happened in G20 history, and especially after 2008, when the G20 formulation got an impetus due to the subprime crisis, the financial crisis that emanated in the US real estate market in late 2008. And from then to now, the G20 has traversed a very wide arc of policy responses. And as Karishma was telling us, one of the key issues is what is India doing as far as financial inclusion is concerned. Jandhan, Aadhaar, Mobile, this is a jam trinity which many millions of Indians are aware about, and now the world is actually getting to understand the power of what India has actually done through the unified payment interface, which is part of the overall digital public goods that the Indian government has been championing for many years now. And we'll now go across to one key member of the startup space who understands the power of Indian Fintech and what we have done both as private entrepreneurs, companies, and as the government. Alok Mittal, the Managing Director of Indifi Technologies. Alok, welcome. You are the first guest on our live coverage here from the International Media Center at the G20 venue. I want you to begin by putting in context what are you making of this entire exercise and effort?
First, thanks for having me here, Siddharth. As you said, truly a proud moment for all of us. I think the exciting thing from my standpoint is that technology diplomacy is taking a whole new meaning under the G20 umbrella. Over the last 10 years, as a nation, we have developed perhaps the most widespread public digital infrastructure that is there globally. And rather than thinking of this as a proprietary asset, we have decided to open this up to the rest of the world. The same problems that we have solved around benefit transfers to billions of people around the country, to making this a less cash economy, to spreading credit inclusion among small businesses and underserved individuals. I think that opportunity today is available across the globe. And India is aptly positioning itself to be able to provide that infrastructure, that know-how, that technology to other countries to make sure that the whole world advances as far as digital credit is concerned.
Alok, I want you to explain to our viewers the importance of India's promise to export the UPI framework. Already well over a dozen countries and more conversations happening who are very keen on the UPI. We also know that there are other substantial conversations that are happening. Explain to the average viewer what it really means in terms of other countries looking at India for such solutions.
So Siddharth, the banking system from a inter-country bank transfer mechanism is probably one of the most outdated ones. It still takes days to transfer money. And India already has started pilots with several countries, including Singapore, around making international money transfer real time. That was the first step in terms of internationalizing UPI. The current proposal now looks at going in and making UPI available for use by these countries for their domestic payments as well as for international remittances. What that means is a far more efficient inter-country money transfer regime. What that means is far more digitization of currency within those domestic markets. And what that means is an opportunity for India to start to develop standards that are globally accepted and in some sense restore the technology balance, which has largely been traditionally in favor of Western countries. And of late, there has been more and more threat of that being in control of one or two large countries like China. So I think from a democratization of technology and making it available to countries regardless of their size and scale, in some sense, even giving advantage to countries that have not had a chance to leapfrog till now, I think is a big democratization factor globally as far as technology and payments adoption is concerned.
Okay, Alok, I will come back to you in a bit, and I'll also go to my colleague Karishma in a bit as far as the World Bank's report today is concerned, and they spoke about how digital payments are making a huge impact in India, and they gave us some numbers. And while we go to Karishma, I just want to quickly recap two key points viewers to keep in mind. Alok is telling us about what I found a very interesting term, technology diplomacy, and how India needs to set standards in this regard. Viewers, what this really means is that for decades now, technology standards, including in IT, in telecom, and of course the financial world, have been set by the advanced countries, the United States, the United Kingdom, the G5. China has over the last 10-15 years tried to make big inroads into it. And now India is also doing that with demonstrated success on the ground, plus the key thing that we need to keep in mind, that India has spoken about open architecture. It's not a closed loop that India seems to be championing, and hopefully we'll get to hear more about that. But Karishma, I want to come to you to explain to our viewers what has the World Bank really said in its latest report, which has taken note of the India digital payment success story.
Well, Siddharth, the World Bank has clearly praised India for its effort of last 10 years in the way that they've handled and introduced various digital payment methods, including UPI being one of them, which has also gone international, Siddharth. If you see, it is the Indian government which has been pushing in order to get various countries collaborate to use UPI, and also set more of a plan for them to also adapt a similar digital payment fintech technique. Now, what the World Bank has also stressed is how about in the next 6 years, India's digital payment network could also take another bigger turn in terms of better advancements, and how this could also be adopted by various other developing countries. Now, one key important point that is also coming is what Prime Minister Narendra Modi also responded to the World Bank reports, saying that the report that it's a testament to the rapid progress and innovation in India. What we are now going to be focusing in the backdrop of G20 is the next 2 to 3 years of financial inclusion plan that has also been introduced under the finance track of G20 presidency, that will be taken up for discussions in the next G20 summit in Brazil. So let me say this in clear words, that we are setting a legacy. We are starting a legacy for the countries to follow on a digital payment structure, which, of course, as you have seen, solved not only made things easier, made things better for urban, but also for the rural section.
That's one of the other parts. And Alok, when we speak about financial inclusion and digital goods, one of the key things, and we've seen this right from demonetization and the expansion of digital sort of adoption, is rural India and bridging the divide that was there for decades on account of literacy, on account of access and the availability of regular banking infrastructure in Bharat. Today, Bharat is perhaps neck to neck or even ahead of India in that sense, the urban part, when it comes to digital adoption. Tell our viewers and explain what is really happening as far as Bharat is concerned in terms of financial inclusion.
Sure, Siddharth. And, we must remember that the original use case for Aadhaar, which was our first really public infrastructure out there, was direct benefit transfer. And there is immense efficiency that has been brought into these transfers that are made from the government to poor people, both in urban and in rural areas. What we are seeing now is, on back of UPI payments, there is more and more credit access. In India alone, in the MSME sector, last year the penetration to new to credit customers was above 30%. Right, 4 years back that used to be 5 to 7%. So there is an immense increase in access to credit in rural areas. In fact, the regulator has set up an innovation hub, and they are innovating around data streams that would allow easy provisioning of Kisan credit card to every nook and corner of the country. Now, I think the exciting part of this is when technologies like Aadhaar started, they started as specific purpose individual technologies. That has now converted into a whole stack of technologies, starting from Janadhan, Aadhaar, mobility, then UPI, now account aggregator. I think the digital empowerment architecture, which allows for consent-based access to information on part of any consumer, itself is path-breaking in an environment where every country today is concerned about use of data by big tech and how consumers are protected in that environment. So DEPA provides yet another layer of now what is India's stack and what should become the global stack over time in terms of empowering the last man in the queue.
Well, that's a good point, Alok. You spoke about technology diplomacy, and as we end this short segment here, and we'll be back with more viewers, I want to reflect on what Alok said. The India stack possibly on its way to become the global stack. And that's a massive thing which we should all be proud of. We'll continue to break down all the key developments, but for now, Alok, thank you very much for your time, and Karishma for joining us with that quick update. We'll be back in just a bit. Stay with us.
India leads G20 Power Meet. Top world leaders in Delhi. This is India's biggest global event ever.
दिल्ली चमकते हुए हैं और G20 की तैयारी काफ़ी अच्छी है.
India gives Global South a voice. The spotlight is on Prime Minister Modi's leadership. Namaste G20.
Welcome. I'm Siddharth Zarabi, and you're watching this special business roundtable on the economic priorities of the G20 summit. With just a day left for the leaders